Welcome into the fantasy draft room. We're not going to do any of the intros here. You already know the drill by now. If this is your first time listening to one of these projection series that I've started to do, this is the fifth one in the series, starting off with the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys today. But if you want a little bit more background to what we're doing here, go back to one of the other episodes, watch the intro, and then jump back over to this video. But today we're just going to hop right into the offensive historicals, looking at the coaching changes on this team. Brian Schottenheimer taking over for Mike McCarthy as the head coach. And then they're also bringing Clayton Adams over from the Arizona Cardinals, who's the offensive line coach over there for the last 2 years, to be the offensive coordinator, kind of a run game guy from looking at his past time in the NFL. I think almost 19 years between college and the NFL. Looking back over the last 3-year average passing attempts, they've averaged 602, 476 total rushing attempts, 383 RB rushes, 100 RB targets, 369 targets to the wide receiver, and 132 targets to the tight end. If you're looking at just any trends from this year or the last 2 years when it was Brian Schottenheimer comparatively over the last couple, passing attempts has increased every single year from 22 to 24. I expect that to go up again. Rushes has gone down each year to account for that, and I expect that to also keep going in that trend as we see this running back room kind of being taken over or reshuffled as they're going into the 2025 season. RB targets has been pretty consistent around that 100 mark. The wide receiver targets has gone up, and the tight end targets has been pretty consistent. So when we're looking at this Brian Schottenheimer offense and what they're doing with the running back room, I think that there's a potential that we even see a further increase now that Brian Schottenheimer is taking over as the offensive coordinator. It could be that this is completely done by Mike McCarthy and they want to get back to a little bit more of a running game. Whenever you're looking at the backfield, though, as a mismatch of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Jaden Blue, I would expect, and then you also bring in a George Pickens alongside of that, I would expect this trend to keep going, and they really just want to operate through this passing game. So where I came out with Dak Prescott at, again, the last year passing attempts was 637. I have that jumping all the way up to 661 as one of the highest passing offenses in the 2025 season. So 661 passing attempts for Dak Prescott. We can now get into his stats individually to see where we're going to get in terms of the total numbers in the passing game. So looking over the past 3 years, as we look at his completion percentage to try to get to our completions, 66%, 69%, 64%, a career average of 66.8. I have that number coming in at 64.45%, which leads to 426 completions. Yards per attempt is coming in at 7.25 and a yards per completion at 11.25. Those numbers over the past few years, yards per attempt has been 7.3, 7.7, 6.9. And so that comes in right about a middle average of about a 7.25. In the yards per completion game, 11, 11, and 10.7 over the last 3 years, with a career average for Dak at 11.3, right at a career average for him with the yards per completion. So that's going to result in 4,794 passing yards for the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. Touchdowns at 30. If you're looking at the touchdown rate, he's averaged a 5.8, or he's over the last 3 years put up a 5.8, 6.1, and 3.8, a really low number for Dak Prescott in 2024. I expect that one to jump back up closer to his career average at being a 5.1 for Dak over the course of his career. That results in around 30 touchdowns here whenever I was adding out the Dallas Cowboys, and 13 interceptions. If we're looking at the running game for Dak, this really isn't a factor anymore in his game. Last couple of years, he's only put up 45, 55, and even lower in 2024. I know we're having a couple of injuries, and he was even injured last year, so I expect Dak to really become truly just a pocket passer here starting in 2025 and probably for the remainder of his career. He only had 13 rushing attempts in 8 games last year, so I came in with him at 31 rushing attempts for 127 yards and that 4.1 yards per attempt average and 1 extra touchdown on the ground. Getting Dak Prescott to get a really good points per game rank number as my 12th highest quarterback in fantasy points per game in 2025. We can start looking at the running backs, though, then. And this one, I have this one highlighted in orange as one of those that I really want to watch and track as we go through training camp starting up probably this week whenever rookies are reporting in. We've got, the preseason games that we can also watch, but the mix of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Jaden Blue. I have this one with Miles Sanders having the most rushing attempts for this team. But this is really one where I can see this number moving any way that you really want to. Obviously, from Miles Sanders, his lowest number of rushes was last year. He only played 11 games, though. Last 2 years being with the Carolina Panthers, his 2023 season, he had 129 attempts. We've seen the fall of Miles Sanders pretty significantly over the last 2 years since his time with Philly. But I do think that he has the best shot to probably take the most carries on this team, and then Javonte Williams be pretty much more of your pass catching back, and then Jaden Blue mixing in a little bit as well. So I'm not really too concerned about where the total number of carries are. I do like the number coming in at that 338 RB rushes. Last year, that was 346. So just a little bit lower than it was last year whenever you had Rico Dowdle kind of manning the backfield for the Dallas Cowboys. Coming in a little bit lower as you're running a three kind of guy system, trying to figure out what these guys do throughout the course of the season. Hard to project right now, but I'll more so look at just the yards per attempt numbers, as I'm pretty loose on where these numbers are sitting in terms of just the total rushes for the team currently right now. But let's start off with Javonte Williams, just because he is the top one, with the 123 carries that I projected out for him at a 3.89 yards per attempt clip. And there we go. We got the page to load for him. Yards per attempt over the last 2 years, whenever he was with the Denver Broncos. Obviously, he's been with the Denver Broncos. This is the first year with a new team. The last 2 years, he put up a 3.6 and a 3.7 yards per attempt. Early in his career, before he really got injured, 4.4, 4.3. So I have this jumping up just a little bit more, hopefully, with the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. I would honestly say he has a better offensive line whenever he was in Denver pretty easily, especially with the departures that the offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys has seen. Not too much of a jump up for him, but a little bit up to a 3.89, resulting in the 479 rushing yards and the 4 touchdowns. For Miles Sanders, looking at his past couple of years of the yards per attempt, 3.3, 3.7, and then his high was in 2022 with a 4.9 yards per attempt. But again, that's the difference of rushing behind a Philly offensive line and rushing behind the Carolina Panthers offensive line. His career average, though, 4.7. I have that jumping back up to a 4.1, basically 4.09 yards per attempt, which is going to result in 561 yards. And just splitting the touchdowns here between Javonte and Miles Sanders at 4 apiece. Jaden Blue, I'm not expecting him to come in and really command a rushing share of this backfield that's going to compare to the top 2 guys. We'll see. He can definitely take over a little bit more. I think that's well within the realm of possibility. But I am still concerned about the fumbling issues that he had whenever he was at Texas, and just kind of looking at the size and build of the Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders types, and the experience that they have in the NFL. I think it would take a lot for Jaden Blue to be supplanting himself into this offense in a meaningful way in terms of the RB rush share. So I only have him coming in with 69 carries for the 289 yards at a 4.19. Easily the most explosive back that they have in this backfield, though. So that's why I'm putting in his number at a little bit higher than the other guys in terms of the yards per attempt. Getting his 2 touchdowns on probably a breakaway, something like that. He obviously has the speed. If they want to use him that way, use him more on the outside kind of game, I think that that's well within the realm of possibility for Jaden Blue. Deuce Vaughn getting a little bit of work here at the bottom of it doesn't really mean anything to me. So let's go into the receiving work for those running backs as well. This one is Javonte Williams manning the head of it pretty significantly for me. The Jaden Blue, I know they could easily use him as more of a pass catcher, but if he's only getting on the field for the 69 rushing attempts, it's hard to just put him into situations where he's going to command a large percentage of the target share as well. And Javonte Williams, even last year, was used really, really heavily. Whenever you're looking at his targets, 70 targets last year with the Denver Broncos. I expect Javonte to be the main lead guy in that category for the Dallas Cowboys this year, unless we start to see very drastic things or hear very different things coming out of Dallas over the course of the next month or so before the season. So I have coming in with the 61 targets. Again, before we get into this, the 3-year average for the running backs targets was 100. I have them coming in at 104, just with an increased passing attack, a little bit more coming up to that 661 number. So the 61 targets, 75.41 reception percentage. And so Javonte Williams over the past 2 years for him, the catch rate has been 81% and 74%. So 75 coming in right about average for Javonte Williams. That results in the 46 catches, 6.54 yards per attempt. Looking back at his yards per reception, he was at a 4.9 and then really jumped up pretty well last year to a 6.7. And so we're seeing just a little bit of a tick down there, but well within the realm of possibility for Javonte Williams, as his career average has been a 6.1. So a little bit of a tick up here, but the 6.54 right on about average pace target for Javonte Williams, and the 2 touchdowns resulting from that. For Miles Sanders, again, just standard running back catch rate. For his catch rate, course of his career has been averaging a 71.1%, so just 72.73, right about where he's supposed to be for 16 catches, for 102 yards and the 1 touchdown. His yards per reception, course of career, 7.1. So it's a little bit lower. Last year, let's just look into a little bit of the historical for him. The last 3 years for Miles Sanders has been 3.9, 5.7, and 6.2. So just a little bit of a tick up in the passing game as well for Miles Sanders for the 1 touchdown. Jaden Blue, as a rookie, we obviously don't have any of the historicals for him. So 76.19, 76.2 catch percentage results in 16 catches, 6.75 as the most explosive back probably in the backfield for them, getting the highest yards per reception number, results in the 108 yards and the 1 touchdown. We're not really excited about this running back room. I'm not. I mean, one of these guys can emerge, but I really do think that they're going to use all 3 of these guys. So none of them coming in higher than a top 36 points per game running back rank over the course of the 2025 football season. But where we're really excited about this one, and me specifically am excited about it for the projections, is at the top 2 with the Dallas Cowboys receivers in CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. We won't spend too much more time on these kind of tertiary 3rd, 4th, 5th receivers in the offense. I think they're just going to be pretty mix matched in whenever you're using a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. You can see maybe a little bit of an explosion of Jalen Tolbert. I know they traded for Jonathan Mingo, but we've seen over the course of his career, he has one of the lowest reception percentages over the course of, I think it's like over 100 targets over the first 4 years. Almost in NFL history. He's like bottom 5 in that number. It's disgustingly low. So I think we really only need to focus on the top 2. Starting off with CeeDee Lamb, though, let's get into his targets that he received last year was 152 on 15 games. He had 181 in 2023 and 156 in 2022. So with this offense passing more, he's obviously not getting up to that 181 number. Somehow didn't even lead the league in targets that year with 181, but 166, he's going to be one of the highest targeted guys in the NFL in 2025, in my opinion. So putting in that 166 number, let's look at his catch percentage, try to get that number that we're seeing for the receptions. CeeDee Lamb, over the course of his career, has averaged a 68.9 catch percentage. High was in that 2023 season that was awesome, 74.6. Last year dropped all the way down to 66.4. So putting him kind of middling those 2 out, he resulted in a 68.07 catch percentage, which is 113 targets on that 166 receptions. 1446 is where we resulted with the total yards for CeeDee Lamb through the air, and that's going to be from that yards per reception rate. Definitely dropped down to his lowest that he's ever put up in his career last year, but you didn't have Dak Prescott for the entirety of the year as well, so they were playing probably a little bit closer to the line than Dak would, pushing the ball down the field more. The 2 years before that, 11.8, he was at 12.7 and 13, so I have him jumping back up closer to those numbers when I'm putting him here at a 12.8 to result in that 1446 through the air and the 10 touchdowns that come along with that. George Pickens is obviously the awesome new addition that they're going to have on this team. Coming away from Pittsburgh Steelers and being put on this team does give them a legitimate outside number 2 that pairs up really well with CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, as long as he can keep his head on straight. I have him coming in here with 124 targets. So that's going to be, let's look at the 124 targets for George Pickens. Looking back at his catch percentage, he's been at a 61, 59, and 57% for the first 3 years of his career. So that's going to come, I'm going to have that one bumping up a little bit, 61.29%, as you're coming away from the Pittsburgh Steelers offenses with questionable quarterback play that he's had there. I think it's a massive step up to be doing this now with Dak Prescott. So close to his career high in his rookie year with that catch percentage number at 61.29%, results in 76 catches. And we know that he's a big play down the field threat type of wide receiver. Led the league in yards per reception in 2023 at 18.1. He hasn't been below 15 in any of the other 2 seasons for George Pickens either. I have him just a little bit lower because I think that it was really used in emphasized within that Pittsburgh Steelers offense that he was truly just a, hey, we're going to throw the ball vertically, jump ball, contested catch type of guy. I have it coming down a little bit as I think there's going to be more ways that he's used within this Pittsburgh or within this Dallas Cowboys offense. So still incredibly high, almost coming in at 15 yards per reception, but I have him in here at 14.79, resulting in the 7 touchdowns. If you wanted to say that maybe you could switch up this touchdown share between the 2 of them, between Lamb and Pickens, I wouldn't argue it too much just because the big body type that that George Pickens is, but CeeDee Lamb has also been pretty good in that role as well. The touchdowns that CeeDee Lamb has put up, he's put up 9, 12, and 6. 6 was only coming in the 15 games that he played last year. So I think that him coming in at 10 is a pretty good rate for him. I'm not even really going to talk about the George Pickens touchdowns that he's received, because whenever you have Kenny Pickett for the majority of that and he can't even hardly average 1 touchdown per game, a lot of difference in opinion can come from that. He has topped out at 5 touchdowns over the course of 17 games. So I have him coming in here at 7 with the offensive increase in the quarterback play with Dak Prescott. Again, not going to do too much here with the other wide receivers, the guys who really don't matter unless you're playing in deeper best balls. I have Jalen Tolbert leading the team in targets out of that group, but it's really just trying to spread those targets around. And then I don't think there's much reason to have to go into and dive into each one of their catch percentages, yards per reception, whenever you're dealing with guys in the 100 rank of the wide receiver position. If you want to dive into it more, you can, but I don't think we need to really do that here. So that's just going to leave the tight end room and led by Jake Ferguson. Obviously, you also have some signs of explosion that have happened over the past whenever Jake Ferguson has been down, from the Luke Schoonmaker, Brevin Spanford. But I still think as long as Jake Ferguson is here, that this tight end room is going to run through him. So I have him coming in here with 102 targets on that 17-game pace. Last year, he had 86 targets on 14 games. In 23, he had 102 targets in 17 games. So looking at that, the 102 targets actually, matches up exactly to that 2023 year. That's interesting that one came out to that exact same number. But the 102 targets, looking at the catch rate then, 68.63 is the number that we resulted with. He's had a catch rate the last 2 years of 69.6, nice, and 68.6. Catch percentage, his rookie year was honestly his best at 86.4, but he only had 22 targets that year. Career average is a 71%. And so I have him just coming in a little bit below the career average of 68.63%. Add a reception here, drop the targets by a little bit, and that almost exactly equals his career total, at least for the last 2 years. So that results in the 70 catches. I have him at 9.3 yards per reception, which feels a little bit low, but if you look back over the last 3 years, a 9.2, a 10.7, and an 8.4. Career average is a 9.6, so it's just a little bit below the career average. 651 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air. I do have Luke Schoonmaker being the second one, followed up by Brevin Spanford, but again, secondary, tertiary type of guys who, as long as Jake Ferguson is healthy, I don't really think have a meaningful contribution to this room right now. Do have Luke Schoonmaker. I guess he comes in at tight end 44, but you're dealing with the depths of a tight end position if you're going down that far. So that is going to be it for the Dallas Cowboys. If you want to yell at me for anything about this, I would expect most of the pushback to probably come with the running back room. But like I said, I think there's a lot of maneuverability that can happen with these numbers. This is just where I have them now. Miles Sanders leading the running back share, Javonte Williams leading the target share for the running back room. And then I guess you could also say with the Brian Schottenheimer coming in that this offense kind of switches up. You also have that addition of Clayton Adams that should help the run game a little bit as well. So you could see the passing attempts actually go down, the running share go up. But again, I'm just going to think with the moves that they've made, with what they're telling us, with the offensive line potentially taking a step back as well, and putting in this running back room comparatively to adding a George Pickens, that I think that this is probably the best way that this offense can operate in 2025. So we're recapping everything. Total passing attempts, 661 for 426 completions, 4,794 yards through the air, 30 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. Total rushes, 396 for 1,670 on the ground and 11 touchdowns. That targets, again, 664, just minus a little bit from the total number of attempts due to throwaways and things like that. The completions actually isn't coming in perfectly here. There's probably a little bit of thing that would happen with like trick play, that type of thing, to where this number isn't exactly coming out to just these guys, or there's probably other wide receivers that could even work in here past the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So we can move these numbers around, but again, 2 catches isn't going to change too much of anything drastically, obviously, through the resulting course of this. In that 4,776, these should match up. I really need to go back and actually fix those last 2. But again, the 30 touchdowns will result in that for 1,057 plays and 41 total touchdowns for the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you again so much for listening into this one. Tomorrow, I'm not sure off the top of my head which team we have. I think it might be the Philadelphia Eagles, but it will be another NFC East team. And I will see you all tomorrow for that video. Peace.